The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and FreedomSlips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, FreedomSlips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Hi, good evening. It's Christine J Hart, and it's the Christine J Hart Show with Revolution Radio tonight, coming live to you from London. And it's 7 o'clock here. I don't know what time it is with you. It's time when we're all getting out our blankets because it's getting pretty cold. As you can hear in my voice, I've got a cold. I feel horrid. So I hope my guest tonight is going to be chatty and very talkative. He normally is. It's someone I've known for a while now, and he is going to educate us on what's going on in South Africa. He has served in the army out there, and he's an expert on military expertise in the area. So I just had an interest in South Africa, what's going on out there. There's been a lot of violence. So my show tonight is kind of updating myself, educating myself, and educating anybody that just like to listen in. So without further ado, I'll bring on my guest. Sean, are you with us? Okay, he's not. He can't hear me. Isn't that odd? Hello? Oh no. What a catastrophe. He was on before, so I don't know what's happening. Gosh. I really can't do a show tonight where it's just me because I have flu and I feel really, really awful. It's always the same way with guests. They let you down. I can see his icon, but he's not actually there. So it's really, really weird. I don't really know what's happening at all, unless it's not me. I don't know what's happening with him. I'll just get him on the phone and see if I can bring him on the show. Okay. 1 second. Phone's ringing now. Sorry, this is so boring. Oh, hi. I'm hello, Sean. I'm not getting you on Skype at all. You're not coming in. So I don't know what's going to happen. I'm going to drop the studio. Then I'm going to ring you again. Could you put your phone down? And then I'm going to do the call all over again. And when you hear me ringing, just pick up and talk straight away, okay?
Okay, I'll do that.
Okay, thank you. Put the phone down. Put your Skype down now. Make sure it's off the call, disconnected the call to me, and then I will ring you straight away. Okay.
Okay.
Bye. Right. I'm going to call and recall. I'll be with you in 2 minutes. Okay, now we're back on air again, and it's very silent, so hopefully I'm going to bring in Sean again. Let's try. There he is. And you click on that, presumably. Add to call. So he's ringing, so that should connect up now. Well, if it doesn't, I can't entertain everyone for 2 hours. Oh, my Lord. Hi, it's ringing now. Are you not picking?
I've answered it.
You're not. Have you muted your mic at all? Can you hear me talking to you through it?
No.
You can't. That's so.
The mic's not muted.
Sorry?
The mic's not muted.
Well, my mic's not muted. No. That's really weird.
I wonder what's going on here.
I don't know. I pretty much think I'm okay.
Perhaps.
Hello? I can hear you a little bit now. I can hear you a little bit now. I think I can hear you a little bit, but it's I'll just hang up the phone. Am I listening through Skype now and hearing you? Speak up. It's quite funny, isn't it, really? But not really. Oh, what a shame. He's really very interesting. Oh, Lord. Well, oh my gosh. This is terrible. I really just I don't get it. He's not coming through. Oh my God. I've got flu and I've got to talk for 2 hours. That's absolutely horrific. Absolutely horrific. What shall we talk about? Okay. So let's talk about serial killers. Let's talk about serial killers. I had in mind that maybe this show would not go ahead the way I had it planned. So I had something on the back burner. So I will talk about serial killers. I had a few trolls underneath the Richie Allen show that I did. Actually, it was one. No, there was two. But it was enough to annoy me. And one of them said she can't have met Ian Brady alone. And my little troll always says that it's his favourite thing to do. She can't have met Brady alone. Now, I've sold that story to a major newspaper. It made the front page back in 1995 when it happened. They had to investigate it. They did, went with the story. I was living in Los Angeles and they put me up in a hotel. They put me up in the St. James Hotel, which was Rod Stewart's hotel when I was living in LA. So there I was. Sunday Express had this credit card behind the bar, and I had sold some of Brady's letters because I'd had this visit with him and it had made me very unhappy. And the visit was all alone, and it had disturbed me somewhat. And I was only a young girl. I was only in my 20s. And what happened is he had written to me. I'd been writing to him off and on for a while. And it was always when I met up with journalists like Phil Hall, who would say, write to Brady, to get a story, basically. So I was stuck doing this. And he had said to me, did my appearance change from last time he had seen me? And I wondered what he meant by that. But I said, no, I'm still the same. And he said, because my visits are all alone now, they're unsupervised. So, I'll give you a date and you'll be alone with me. Now, alone with him sounds all very interesting, but it's actually in a room that's the normal visiting room. And there's a big glass viewing thing in the door, so people walk past and view every now and again, including the nurses that work there, because it is actually a mental institution for the criminally insane rather than a prison. And he's basically on the liquid cosh, so he was deemed that he would not harm his visitors. I think at that time there was only Lord Longford and myself. I might be wrong about that, but there wasn't that many visitors. And his lawyer. And he had written in the letter, which has been much perused by others. There's copies of it flying around. I have the original. He said, then when I gave him a date, he said, so you will be alone with me. How does that make you feel? Are you afraid I might bite you? And this is because he believed that Hannibal Lecter was based on him, because in the first version, Manhunter, it was a Scottish actor. It's not true at all. It wasn't based on him, but you couldn't really disabuse him of the fact. So he had written this in the letter. And I was having hypnotherapy at the time by a really brilliant hypnotherapist to regress me. And she kept regressing me. And I told her about this. And she said, you can't go. do you think you have to go because he, might harm you? And she had seen the letter, and I said, what might he do? And she said he might just get a fork and scrape it down your face. Why do you think you have to put yourself in that position? But I think I was greedy journalistically to have this experience, because I thought he would, reveal his true self and tell me all his secrets. Of course, that wasn't going to happen, but I thought it was going to happen. So I was ambitious, and I didn't want to miss out on this experience, because I thought, it would gain me something, some kind of a book or something like that. So I was eager to go along, and I was late, actually. The train from London to Liverpool was late, and visiting hours at that particular institution, Park Lane, they stop at 4 o'clock. It's either 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock. But I was sitting on this train that had broken down, and I thought, well, I'm not going to get there till really late, and I'm going to miss visiting hours. And so I rang his psychiatrist, who was called Dr. Strickland, and I said to Dr. Strickland, I'm going to be really late. And he kind of laughed, and he said, don't worry, you just come in when you want. And back at that time, Park Lane, it has changed now. It's called Ashworth, and they tightened up. But back in that time, in the 90s, mid-90s, it was, basically the patients were taking drugs, and it was really kind of laid back and free for all and pretty hip hop kind of thing. So I carried on the train, and when I got there, the staff working said, you're too late and you're not going to be allowed in. And I had 5 minutes, I think, to 5. And I said, look, actually, I have got 5 minutes, look at the clock. And they were really angry with me. They gave me, the rough treatment as they looked through my boots and searched me. And I walked across to the place where Brady was kept. That's Ian Brady, the Moors murderer, in case nobody's listening. I think Britain's only serial killer. And so he was sitting in the room already. Was he sitting in the room? No, I went to sit in this visitor's room where I'd been before. I'd visited him twice before. I think it was 5 years earlier on 2 occasions. And there was always I won't call it a guard, because it was a nurse. There was a mental nurse sitting in the room over one side. It was a very big room over one side of the room. And of course, you could sit opposite Brady on the other side. But on this occasion, him having his visits unsupervised, as he called it, he was told to sit in front of the door, so not too far away from the door, and the guest was supposed to sit there in full view of the window. And so I got there late, and it was starting to get dark, but I was shown in, and I believe I sat down, and then he came in after, and he had a sheet of paper with a whole list of things to talk about. And one of them was poetry, Shelley, another one, something I'd said to him, and on and on. He worked his way down the list. And time went on, and it moved around. I think it got to about 7 o'clock. Somebody came in and said, oh, your visit should end now, shouldn't it? And I think he stood up then at that point, and she said, it's medication time. So he then went out to get medication. I remember looking through the window to see what they were doing. They were all lined up, all the patients, male patients, and getting their medication time. At this point, it was all a bit one flew over the cuckoo's nest watching it. When he came back, it's almost like he seemed really, really drunk, as if he'd knocked back quite a lot of whiskey, and he kept blinking his eyes and shaking his head as if he was drunk. I then thought, well, it's about time I got out of here. His speech seemed to be slurring quite badly. I still really hadn't learned the secrets of his soul. So I think it then went on for about another half an hour of mindless chit chat, where I was really dragging hard into my head to try and find out something to talk about. He then started talking about his murders, little bits of gloating. I tried to change the subject. Then the nurse came back in again, went out again, and said, you have to wrap up, it's time to go. So I stood up, and I think this was my fault because I sort of went to hug him goodbye in the way, you do just to somebody you've been talking to for 3 hours. And he then lunged at me and shoved his tongue in my throat, which really shocked me because it was like kind of not really a normal person doing it. Plus the fact it was Ian Brady, it was really kind of wet, and it was like a mental patient doing it. So it was really horrible, and my whole mouth was covered in spittle. And the nurse came back in, and she looked at me. I almost felt like, hang on, what's going on here? What am I, the experiment guinea pig or something? That's what I kind of felt. Maybe that was paranoia of some kind. Anyway, then I said, "Where's the toilet, please?" And pointed to my face, and she showed me to the toilets. Bizarrely, when I washed my face, came out, and expected to be showed out because Brady had addled down the corridor to his room, which I think was about third on the left. And I'd seen him go in there before, and I came out and there was nobody around. There was no nurse around. Their little office in that little complex was closed. I went and tried that, and there was this little bald guy who was clearly a patient, who kind of had weird rubbly lips and was like sort of standing, grabbing the curtain, staring at me. It was all very bizarre, actually, and I got quite scared because it was dark outside, and here I was trapped in. And I thought, have the staff gone home? So then I had no choice but to walk down the corridor and knock on Brady's door and force my way in, because he seemed a bit stunned that here was a visitor from the outside world, and indeed was coshed up to the eyeballs. So I then asked him, had a bit of a nose round his quarters, and asked him, could he call a member of staff? So he eventually, after not really getting much out of him, because he was so drugged up, eventually he got up and kind of said, "Oh, I don't know where they are. It's not my thing," and tried to show me different things in his room. So I then went out and went down again to the office, and there was somebody was around. Somebody came out of nowhere, and they were like kind of not really that bothered. I said, "Oh, I seem to be stuck in here," and they were like, "Oh, someone didn't let you out. Okay, I'll let you out now." Just seemed a bit weird, because I thought, well, that is quite an infamous kind of prisoner you got there. But yeah, he let me out, and I sat on the train, and I started to feel really, really spaced out and really, really freaked out. And I thought, oh my God, what the hell has gone on? So I went to this hypnotherapist that I was seeing. I went and banged down her door, and she lived in Gloucester Place. And I literally remember coming to her door, and I'd heard the phrase banging down someone's door, but I thought that never happens. But I actually banged down the door. I actually remember my fists going one after the other on the door. And she opened up and she goes, "Oh my God, what happened?" as she saw my face. And I said, "I feel really weird, like really spaced out and floating up near the ceiling." She said, "You're in shock. What happened?" She said, "Hang on, I'll get you a brandy." So she got me a brandy, and I sipped the brandy, and I told her what he'd done. And she just stared at me, and I said, "I feel really weird." I said, "Well, you would do." Yeah, it's really horrible memory, actually. It's really horrible, and then when you tell your story and then someone says, no, he wouldn't have been left alone with people. It really annoys me. Not just annoys me, it's like being spat on somehow, even if it is just some mindless peanut gallery troll who's doing it. It really, it hurts me, actually. And maybe I shouldn't say it hurts me, but it does hurt me, because that whole experience hurt me, and it shouldn't have happened. And I've had people say to me that they could help me sue sue them. But I think, what's the point? Because, I was there at the end of the day. I was an adult. I was hoping to get something out of the situation. I just didn't bank on him doing that, really. It wasn't being left alone with him that was the shocking thing, because there was someone, walking past, peering in. There was the other men sort of slobbering through the door with their big eyes looking. So I didn't really feel as if I was alone with him. So that wasn't the deal. The big deal, the upsetting thing, was the slobber thing at the end, because I almost felt as if he had put his darkness into me somehow, and I couldn't get it off me. And it was really, really horrible feeling. And Susanna sat there with me and calmed me down, and I went off. And I'd been looking into having primal therapy in Los Angeles, which kind of supposedly breaks you open and gets to past pain, because I was pretty sure that I had gone and let myself be in that position, something to do with my childhood. I recognized that other people didn't do it, even though, okay, it was greed. It was motivated by greed and need for accolades. I was always a writer, and I was ambitious of my writing. And I thought, oh, okay, he's going to tell me loads of secrets, and I will, be able to share them with the world and get this accolade of, ooh, you've exposed what evil actually is. So there was greed there, and I'm sure they would fight back and probably win. I don't know. But it did scar me, and it did have a really bad effect on me, where I thought, what's wrong with me that I let myself be put in that position? And I was sure that nobody else would let themselves be put in that position. I wouldn't be put in that position now after primal therapy, because I would be too scared. I would think they would lunge at me and do what Susanna said, scar me in some kind of way, just because he could. But back then I didn't seem to have any fears. I hitchhiked one time across Morocco, across the desert, and this guy sort of dropped me at his friend's house, and then somewhere else, and I had this really mad adventure in Morocco. And then I tried to get into Libya. This was the way I behaved. I was just out for adventure, and I didn't really have any regard for myself or danger. And I recognised that was due to my childhood. And so I had read about Arthur Janoff's primal therapy, and I knew John Lennon had done it. So I actually got the book by accident. I went to the library, and something was telling me inside my head I was there to get a book. And I went there and thought, I can't find anything I want. And I went to leave, and something wouldn't let me go. And I said to this energy that wouldn't let me go, okay, lead me straight to it, because I'm not going to sit around this damn library all afternoon. And I kind of just walked straight over to this shelf, pulled out this book, The Primal Scream by Arthur Janoff, and said to myself, is this it? And the energy was like, yep. And so I checked out the book and went home and read it. And it was all about, it's a really interesting book. I do recommend it. And I also recommend The Feeling Child by Arthur Janoff. He states that feelings are the most important thing. And if you have a bad childhood, your feelings go into ice. They're actually frozen. So you become like a cloven pine child, and you're trapped. That feeling part of you is trapped, and it can't get out, basically. So primal therapy is said to be quite a rough ride. I'll testify to that. It's a really rough ride. They basically smash your defenses down, whatever they might be, and they then wait for whatever's in there to rise up. And then hopefully the idea is that you get back in touch with your feelings. So I had this experience with Brady. I felt very weird about it. I felt really weird about it. And so I thought, I just want to strip myself down and find out, like a clock. I want to strip it down, put it back together, find out why it's not ticking along properly, why I'm not doing what other women are doing, like marrying, looking for a house and that kind of thing. I had no urge to do any of that. I was just really ambitious to find out the nature of evil, and really driven to do it. And I thought I don't want to be like that if it leads me in there getting my face drenched. Really, it was horrible. And so I flew out. I only had £3,000 in the old kitty, and I was working. I was working as a private investigator back then, and I was working for quite a few really good firms. One of them was Argon, and I was earning quite well actually, and I was doing bits and bobs for the News of the World and the Star, and who I'd got in contact with through Phil Hall, who was a boyfriend of mine who became the News of the World editor. So I was doing quite well, but I just wanted to do this therapy. So I wrote them all a note and said, I'm out of here, but I might be back in a year or so, find someone else basically. I was quite ambitious. So I went to LA and I got a room in Hollywood and I started to do the primal therapy. And it's really weird because it costs like, I think, God, a lot of money up front. So I quickly did my 3,000, and there I was living, sharing with this really odd woman in Hollywood, and I didn't have a job because I was illegal, and well, I wasn't. I was illegal to work in America, and I was like lonely, and I was doing the promotherapy. It was freaking me out because what happens? You get your therapist. I had Barry Bernfeld, who ran the institute. I demanded him. I said, "No, I'm a journalist, so I'm going to write about you if you take me as a patient." So I ended up writing about him actually in my book, Searching for Daddy. So he took me as a patient, and basically you go along and they put you in a little room and you sit with your therapist and they dim the lights. So you sit on the floor next to them in this little room, and the lights are dimmed and it's all like really nice. And I think soft music is playing. I might be wrong about that. It's like so long ago. And basically the therapist re-mothers you. So you start talking about your life and what's going on, how you're feeling. And basically he will chip in the way of a really loving mother. And if you're like me, that will be like, what? If you've never had that kind of love bombing at you. And they do it really well. They don't do it in a way where you think, come on. They do it really sneakily. It's really like sort of sinks in your bones kind of thing. It's crafty. It's part of the therapy. And he started saying, and I blocked him mostly. I was like, why are you saying that? And giving him looks as if to say, what, you're on my side? It's always just been me. And then you go back once a day for, I think it's an hour every day. And it's expensive. So my poor little $3,000 went down and down and down. And I'd been working for a PI called Colin Brooke. And he said to me, why don't you sell letters you got from Brady, including that one, you'll be alone with me. Are you afraid I might bite you? And I'd already been out on a date with Greg Miskew, the News of the World editor, who took me to a boxing match. And I brought that particular letter along. And he was like, oh, my God, this is awesome. We'll pay you, I think, $5,000 for it if you give this letter to us and we can do a story on it. And I actually did. I handed it over, and then I thought he gave me the money, and it was actually Susanna, this hypnotherapist. I went to see her to get another treatment, and I had new clothes on, a leather jacket, and plenty of cash. And she said, "No, you didn't do that. That's disgusting. You can't do that. That's a human being." I said, "No, it's a serial killer. It's Ian Brady. It's not a human being." And she said, "No, it's wrong. It's wrong. Give the money back." Give the money back. And I'm like, no, I don't really want to give the money back. And she kind of sort of shamed me into giving the money back. So I rang them, got the money back, got this damn letter back, which obviously they photocopied and kept. And I'd taken it with me to America with these other letters, all quite boring. But the press do make a big deal out of them, from the Moors murderer. And this PI, I know Colin Brooke was working for the Sunday Express, and he said, look, they'll pay you £10,000 for the letters. So I said, well, I've got nowhere to live either. Will they put me up? So I picked this beautiful hotel that I'd seen from the bus window called the St James, which was Rod Stewart's hotel. So they said, okay. And back in those times, it was the 90s, the press had like loads of money. So I knew the score and I checked into the hotel and immediately got stuck into having the best seat and champagne and lobster, and inviting all the patients from the Primal Institute back there to have lobster as well. And they were saying, "You know, why are you in this hotel?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm pretty famous in my own country. I'm a famous writer." But sadly, the truth was I was just selling some scabby letters to the Sunday Express, but I didn't want to say that. So it was really good because they were filming a film called Strange Days, and Ralph Fiennes, Ray Fiennes, he turned up, but he wasn't famous back then, and he'd only been in Wuthering Heights, and I'd seen him in Wuthering Heights, and he started staring at me, and nobody's going to believe this now. I was actually attractive when I was younger, so he was staring at me, and this is typical me. I kind of just gave him a look and went for one of the other guys, one of the mafia guys, who turned out to be such a creep, but typical behaving. There was a decent guy interested, but I was like, no, that creep over there, because he's dressed like the mafia. And so I actually became a little extra in the movie because I was kind of hooked up with this mafia guy. But in the end, it was all cut out. But you can just see the scene in the movie Strange Days where someone says, let's go to the St. James, and they draw up at this beautiful hotel. It's just a fantastic, fantastic hotel. And before I had gone there, I'd had a dream about hugging this Black Panther in my dream. And it was really weird because in the lobby of the hotel was a giant Black Panther. And I was only draped over it one day when all of a sudden I remember the dream that I had been cuddling this Black Panther and sort of walking up and down a beach. And indeed, there I was having this beach life and cuddling this Black Panther. So what happened? This guy from the Inquirer was supposed to mind me. So he was minding me, and I was by the pool every day. But by this point in time, I had decided that I was in love with Barry, my therapist. And it had only happened one day. I was sharing a flat with a girl called Lucian, who I'm still friends with on my Facebook. And we were sharing a flat together, and we were just doing a little bit of work. I shouldn't have been working, but she'd got me this gig as like model come actressy part, where you dress up in things. And we were mermaids one time on this cart. And we went home. We were giving out free cigarettes, I think, as well at one point. My memory isn't that great about that. And we were coming home and I said, oh my God, I love him so much. And she said, what do you mean, the guy next door? And I said, no, Barry. And she was like, God, Christine, I wouldn't have shared a flat with you if I'd have known you were going to be flaky. But I was having my defenses battered down each day by Barry. And I just slowly over time, I became a dribbling wreck. It kind of just turns you into a sort of dish rag on the floor. It's really quite a strong therapy, and it has made people suicide. It has made people turn basket cases. It basically just rips out every defense you've got. So if anybody is taking drugs, anybody's drinking, they won't be when they do primal therapy. It just rips the lid off you and sees what's underneath, and basically it's mush and there's pain, and it's a little bit like being laid on operating theatre and being cut open, and oh look, there you are. And I had this really strong feeling of love for Barry and need. I became just a tiny baby, just wanting to just touch him, and it was quite disturbing, really. And so I had left Lucian to book into this fancy hotel just because I wanted a bit of the high life, and told this Sunday Express I'd nowhere to live. So they'd put me up in there. So I was basically living in there. And this journalist from the Inquirer, who did a bit of freelancing for the Sunday Express, was minding me, which meant he sat by the pool every day. Then he took me out to dinner. And he was actually friends with a really good Hollywood journalist, and I can't remember her name. She was so bitchy. and she was really bitchy to him. Oh my God, she was such a ball basher over dinner. She really got stuck into him. But she had amazing stories. She had stories about Mickey Rourke. She had stories about Cher, what a bitch Cher was to all her staff. Oh my God. And she talked on about all the celebrities in such a way that she really did know her shit. And by the time I got out of the car, I turned and I said to her, "You are the most interesting person I've ever met." And all of a sudden her face changed from really bitchy to really soft. And she went, "Oh, really?" So I bust through her defences there. Must have been catching with the primal therapy. So I basically then, this guy was minding me. I basically handed over these letters and to the Sunday Express. They had homed in on the this Hannibal Lecter thing, and I had, I think they gave me £8,000, and I didn't want to touch it because I didn't want to earn money out of Brady, and that was something I'd really stuck to. Any stories I'd done, I'd said no, well, not a lot of them. I wasn't offered money, but anything I'd done, I didn't want to touch it because it felt like bad karma. So I said to the Express to pay it directly to the Institute, which they did, and it was only £8,000. I heard later that Colin Brooke, who brokered the whole thing, got quite a lot of money actually, but never mind. So that was all just going to end, and I was going to have this therapy. I was going to be able to carry on my therapy, which was becoming the most important person in my life, the most important thing in my life. Basically, they tell you, "Oh, wait till you get the cure, wait till you get the cure." And they kind of tell you that all of a sudden you'll pop into a different kind of state of mind, and that will be who you were always meant to be. It doesn't really work like that. Janoff then wrote another book called Primal Scream 2, where he admitted that it takes about 3 years for you to actually get to that point. And it takes 3 years, and during those 3 years, you will actually feel really, really bad. But I didn't read that at that point. I was just like everyone else thinking, "Ooh, this is going to be fun." But I was actually starting to feel really, really bad. And so I needed that money to do the thing. Anyway, this cheesy story was going to go ahead just about what he'd said and the fact I had gone in, and he has, not really on me having the visits alone, but just that he was allowed with everybody visits alone, and just a few quotes from his letters. That was the deal that had gone down. And on the Saturday, and of course Sunday papers come out on the Sunday, but I think we were ahead of time, and I should have cottoned on to that we were ahead of time where we were, because newspapers go to bed on Saturday about 6 o'clock. So when it came to Saturday about 6 o'clock, I had made quite good friends with the journalist that was there in LA, and I said to him, I said, I'm really feeling bad about what happened when I was left alone with him. And he went, "What?" And I said, "It's just made me feel like really dirty. In fact, I'm having like really bad nightmares, and like some kind of dark spirituality and stuff is haunting me." And he said, what do you mean? Did he hurt you or anything?" And I said, "No, he sort of rammed his tongue down my throat and like sort of gobbed at my face." And he went, "Oh, really?" And then he started saying, "That's like sexual abuse, isn't it?" And I'm like, "Well, not really." And then to my horror, they ran a front page that I had been sexually abused by the Monster of the Moors, which actually wasn't true. And yeah, pretty nasty, because that wasn't part of what I'd given to them. That was me telling somebody, and I was naive. Turned out that even though it was 8 o'clock Saturday night, my time in LA, back in London, it was 9 o'clock in the morning on Saturday. So they had plenty of time to work that into the story. And I was like mortified. And they had a picture of me on the front page near the swimming pool in this Rod Stewart's hotel in LA. So it's all very surreal. And I didn't think it was very fair to say that he'd sexually abused me, because he was just out of his nut. And there was a dopey blonde sitting, by then, so it's not really fair. I didn't think it was fair, because it's just like what a mental patient would do if you have a dopey blonde there in front of you. So I thought, well, that's not really fair. So I eventually moved out of I stayed as long as I could in the hotel, and then I moved out, and I still kept seeing Barry. I showed him the story, and I said, "I feel really bad about this. I don't know why." he said, you're kidding, aren't you? It's absolutely disgusting. Why wouldn't you feel bad about this? It's not even true. You basically abused him, didn't you? And I said, well, yeah, I suppose so. He said, you shouldn't have been there. And, let's get to some reality here. So I stayed there and I went in what's known as Big Circle, where you sit and you talk to Barry with other people. And basically, all the girls there were madly in love with him. All the men were like, oh, Barry. So we were all like little kids dying for mummy's attention. And basically, we triggered off each other. And you were allowed, if somebody said something and you thought they were boring, or you thought they weren't speaking the truth, or you thought that they weren't getting to their feelings, you were allowed to shout at them. And it was all very weird, actually. I did find it quite funny. I was one of those people that, well, no, I was going to say that I was one of those people that others didn't really pick on, but that wasn't true. There was a girl there who liked Barry quite a lot and had decided that I was prettier than her. That wouldn't have been difficult, actually. She was called Morel, and if she's listening, well, she's listening. I haven't forgotten Morel. And one time I was telling her that I had been walking down the street and I'd met this guy, and this American guy, and he looked, he was gorgeous. He looked like Ray Liotta, for God's sake. He's actually still one of my Facebook friends. Of course, he's older now, but when he was younger, he looked like Ray Liotta. And of course, I love Ray Liotta. And we got talking, and basically we just kind of sort of sat down. And then after a while, we started kissing, which is probably seems bad, but not when you're like feeling like you're on holiday. And I shared this in the group, and I said maybe it was the wrong thing to do. And she piped up, this Morel, and she just leaned forward and she goes, do you know you talk like a whore? I said, excuse me, what do you mean I talk like a whore? You talk like a whore. And I thought, why, who says that to someone? I said, what do you mean? Hoping there's going to be like, some backup with just some kind of niceness, but no, there wasn't. And then she made it even worse. She said, I work with prostitutes and you sure act like one. She's kissing some guy like that. I said, hang on, it wasn't sex, it was kissing him, for God's sake. She goes, you still act like a whore. And luckily this other girl stuck up for me, because I'm not that great at sticking up for myself. So she stuck up for me, and there was always a thing between me and Morel. Then we went into bigger group. All the littler groups from all the different therapists had something called really big group on Friday. And when I went to really big group, I saw her there. And I thought, I'm going to bring this up in front of everybody. There was about 30 people, maybe more, sitting around in a room. And I said, you called me a whore the other day, and I'm not really that happy about it. And she said, that's because you do act like a whore. I thought, so I sat down. I thought, this isn't right. So I was dealing with all my energy that was coming up inside me, this anger. So I all of a sudden just stood up and started banging the walls and shouting out ugly, sort of like bang, ugly, bang, ugly, bang, ugly. And then I got so worked up, I span out of the room and did it next door, and I knew they could hear me. I deliberately picked the wall that I knew they were in and was banging, and the walls were shaking, the whole building was shaking as I was pounding the walls, crying out, you're so ugly. And of course, that was me getting to my feelings about my mother, who was jealous of me and always pounded at me, because it's all about your mother or your father at the end of the day. And I came back in, I felt much better. She was quivering wreck on the floor, really, really upset, crying. I was so glad. Oh, she made me so angry, because there's no need for it, there was just no need for it. So that went on, and the feedback then I was getting from London that Ian Brady had gone to the High Courts and had taken the Sunday Express to court. And it actually got thrown out of court because they said you can't libel a serial killer. But his solicitor had come out and lied to the waiting public that they had won against the Sunday Express. And I had said malicious things about Brady. And I hadn't even said anything, I hadn't said malicious things, but it said that word, malicious. And of course, the Sunday Express then said, no, hang on, we've won. So then the Independent who had printed it, they had to print an apology the next day and said the Sunday Express won. Because then I ended up writing a book about the whole thing about primal therapy, about what happened, called Searching for Daddy. I didn't want it to be called Searching for Daddy. And Hodder and Stoughton got it. And as soon as it come out, they got a letter from Brady to say, oh, look, no, I'm going to sue you. Look, read this, with this little thing where he said that he won in court against the Sunday Express, and they contacted me. I said, no, you go to the newspaper library, you get next day's clipping where it said he lost, and you send him that and say, go away, asshole. So they did do that, so that put a lid on that. But the last time I heard of Brady was when I was doing some interviews. He had a trial for his sanity, and I did so many radio interviews and so many TV interviews, and one of them was BBC World Service, and I was going in there to do the interview to talk about evil, and I picked up the Sunday Times, and the Newsweek had done a thing on it, and he was talking to one of his social workers, and he had said that he's never met anyone he's hated, but that he would make the exception when it came to Christine Hart, and that he saved a very special loathing for me. I thought that was quite funny, because I actually didn't mean to make those accusations, not at all. I'm a fair person, and I certainly didn't mean to say that, so that's that. You'll find that, so, it does annoy me when I share that. And I don't really like sharing it because I don't like speaking about Brady. And I've made because it's disturbing. It's a disturbing memory. And I made that exception because Rich Allen made me talk about it. And I should have said beforehand, I don't want to talk about that. But he came on the end and brought it up. And I knew someone would say something. And there was, of course, a troll saying, no, she never would have been left alone with Brady. Really annoys me. It just, I don't know, there's something about being called a liar, or being, or saying you're not speaking the truth, as if you would go to David Icke and fill him full of a load of nonsense, there's a relationship I hope to do things with. If you do tell stuff that's nonsense, it soon gets found out. So yeah, it just triggers me, and I don't know why it does trigger me, because then I think about, well, I suppose they see him as like, oh, really scary serial killer. Oh, a really scary serial killer would never be left alone with anyone. But at that time, they did judge him as being a mental patient. They did have the liquid cosh. Of course, now he's put in a really strict ward, and I have read that he says his visits aren't worth having. So those times alone don't actually happen anymore. Park Lane Hospital was pretty free and easy. I know Guy Patrick from The Sun has verified information. He has documents, actually proof of documents, that Brady had an affair with a nurse when he was there, and this nurse used to bring him drugs. They had sex, yep, believe it or not. Now this is going to come out after he dies, because Guy Patrick, who works for The Sun, won't be able to bring it out when he's alive, because he will then come after him for privacy, because it is I do believe the way he's got it is, it's an abuse, and it is supposedly private. But he had this love affair with a nurse, and actually they had a full sexual relationship. So that's how free and easy Park Lane is. And then she got the sack. Gosh, I wonder what she looked like. So yeah, so I don't like speaking about that, because then you have to go through the whole thing of, no, I was left alone. And it's annoying because it's something so petty, it's really, really a petty thing. But I suppose in the minds of other people that comment, it's like, ooh, really, ooh. Now, the serial killer I got to know after that, Kenneth Bianchi. Now, if you were left alone in Kenneth Bianchi, that would be another thing, because you would be murdered, you'd be strangled. He is another thing. thing altogether. He's your real deal. He is your Hannibal Lecter style murderer. Just sitting with him, I was absolutely terrified, and I was glad that even though the room was just full of guards carrying God, the most, they had like so much silverware on them. There was so many guards in there as well, you know, some sitting down, some walking around. And still I looked at him and I thought, no, you know, just to be alone with him, he would absolutely wipe you out, you know, not if you were a man, but a woman. He had a massive amount of anger towards women. I could feel it. He would absolutely rip you into bits. So, yeah, if anybody catches me saying, oh, I was all alone with Kenneth Bianchi, then you get to say, no, you weren't. But you never will get me saying that because, firstly, it would never be allowed because he is highly dangerous. And he's in an actual prison where they take their prisoners, certainly their serial killers, very, very seriously. He's not, you know, like the Yorkshire Ripper swanning around with Jimmy Savile and the black guy Bruno, whatever. And, you know, they have a whale of a life in the asylums here, serial killers. They really do. They shouldn't really be in them because, you know, what they've done it consciously, and it's not really a mental thing, it's a spiritual thing. So they're never really going to get cured in those places because it's a spiritual thing. And Bianchi, amazingly, that's Kenneth Bianchi, the Hillside Strangler, he actually is full of life. You know, you'd expect if you spent 30 years just in a cell, solitary confinement in a cell, that you would be at least a little bit weak looking or beaten down or but he's bouncing. He looks as if he's been eating salad and going for jogs along a beach, and he's full of confidence, and it's weird, but I think he gets his sustenance through the dark side. And as I've spoken about before, that he can come out of his cell, he can astrally project, so he doesn't really have a life where he's stuck inside a cell. And I've written quite a lot about Mr. Bianchi in how Nick Davis hired me to spy on my former colleagues at the News of the World, which is on Amazon. So the second part is all about Bianchi. I do find him quite interesting. I would like to slap the shit out of him because of just who he is. He's such a chameleon and such a dishonest human being. He really is tied in with the dark side. He really does have a little pet fallen angel, and he does have powers. He's, I would say, an adept along the lines of Michael Aquino, and not someone to be screwed with. There was a young girl contacted me a while ago, and she said she was writing to him, a young American girl, pretty, and she was going, I want to get to know a serial killer. And I said, do you know actually what you're dealing with? And I explained to her that I had this horrible feeling, almost like having a ghost in the house, of someone like watching me. It was horrible. And because I'm psychic, so I know about spirits, but it's not that great to know that it's serial killer that can do it, because it's like, you know, that's pretty dark. So I warned her, and I warned her that this other writer, Chris Berry D, had the same experience, and I warned her that she would have that same experience. Anyway, she contacted me it was about 6 months after, and she said, oh, I'm really scared. There's a dark presence around me in my home. I'm really scared. Why didn't I listen to you? Oh, God. Anyway, I didn't respond immediately because I didn't get her message, so I got it a long time after, and I tried to respond, and I wasn't able to, you know, where you hit reply, I wasn't able to hit reply. So Yeah, so that was yeah, so I don't know what's happened to her. He is terrifying. And I would say to somebody who's thinking of writing to him, no, don't, because as soon as you send off that letter, as soon as he gets that letter, he will find you. He will find you because of the your energy on your letter. He will basically bang, he'll be there. And don't do it. Really don't do it because he's dangerous. He really is dangerous. He's incredibly powerful. I would say he's just as powerful as Michael Aquino. And I've shared before about my experience with him. And, he's terrifying. That's another point, actually, under that Rich Allen show. There was another little troll who said, oh, you meet up with Michael Aquino in the astral. Oh, I can't believe you know these people. And then this guy disappeared. It was really, really annoying. And I said, I'm terrified of that man. I'm not terrified, but he can give you a rough ride. The same as Bianchi can give you a rough ride. So I'm not interested in upsetting them. And I certainly wouldn't go out of my way to meet up with them. Why would you encourage them? Don't. They're looking for little victims. Why would you put your hand up at the front? Here, me, I'm vulnerable. Come and attack me. Come and make my life a misery. You don't. You keep out the way of these people. I did think when I nearly lost the show the other day. I nearly lost the show. I had Jolene Seabasher on, and I'd got carried away, and I was really upset with the trolls under the Richie Allen show, even though it was just really one. It was a woman who had said something like, I don't buy you. I don't buy you. I don't think you've been abused or something like that. And I buy Kathy O'Brien, but I don't buy you. And it had triggered me very, very, very badly. And this woman who wrote it, she actually came into my astral in a quite horrible way. So she's actually got alters, and she's actually got attachments, and I felt the full force of them. And it really upset me a lot. And then I spoke to James Bartley about it, who said, yeah, when you tell your story, often other monarchs come forward to attack. And so you get attacked on all levels. And then when you get trolled by someone who is hosting energy, they say certain trigger words. Sorry, this is James Bartley's information, not mine. They say certain trigger words that trigger you into a negative state. And she did trigger me into a negative state. And it took me 3 days to to get back to peaceful serenity. And it just upset me, it niggled me. It wasn't on the floor or anything, but it niggled me. And I had the spiritual attacks from her. And so I just felt annoyed that I had said my story on air. And I felt quite unjustifiably annoyed with David Icke, who encouraged me to do it. And I thought, who's he working for? And so I expressed that a little bit. And now thinking back, it's probably really unfair because he's been generous with me, and Rich Allen was very, very soft with me. And it's not their fault that I had been attacked in such a way. I mean, obviously it's going to happen, but I'd been used to the basis people who are a different kind of breed. They're very there's a lot of people that are very highly intelligent, and there are a lot of people that are highly involved. Not a lot, but one or two. And so I didn't feel very abused by them. So it was almost like it was the first time I told the damn story. And to home in on the petty stuff like Brady, when I wanted to basically home in on the Vatican and what they were up to in their children's homes. And it just really triggered me. And so I expressed that on the show. And then I thought, well, it wasn't fair. So I basically binned the show. And Jolene was rather cross and went to the owner of the show, Hawk, and I think gave him a hard time because he then came to me and was upset. Why did you tell this woman that I binned the show when it was you? But I didn't ever say that. I just told her that I had got rid of it because I didn't feel that I was fair. And, it's my prerogative at the end of the day. I don't know why she went to the owner. Really, it made me feel bad because she didn't really have any business to go to Hawk. not really. He's busy doing this, and it made me feel bad because, people should come to me, and I don't know even where she got his email from or his phone number, and it upset me because it ruined my relationship with Hawk, which was a little bit teetering on the edge of a cliff. And now it's pretty much fallen over the edge of the cliff. And it was also drama as well that I didn't really need in the middle of the week. I'm trying to do different things in my life, and I'm up against it. I really don't need drama, and it gave me drama that I didn't need, and it shouldn't have happened. It happened before with another woman who did the same thing, but it's the host's prerogative that, if they feel that the guest has maligned someone or I have maligned someone, to say, oh, scrapped it, it's not the end of the world. You can have the guest back again and go again, and they can see it as a dry run. But sadly, in these cases, the guest got pretty angry and then went off to Hawk, and that ruined my relationship with him. So, yeah. So anyway, I've shared about serial killers and what they're like, and also, yeah, talking on, because clearly I've got another hour. Talking on about Monarch as well. There was someone that said to me, "Oh, I believe Sarah's a Monarch, and James and Max, but not you. You're an embarrassment, what you say about Monarch." And I deleted this guy because it was actually on my YouTube, and I thought about it, and I thought, what ninny would think that you'd grab something like that and hold it to your chest and be really happy about it, I mean, thinking about what it is and thinking about what Ros Tisdar calls those people, which isn't pleasant, satanic super soldiers, satanic soldiers, because of the attachments. And if nobody in their right mind would be over the moon to find out they'd had that experimental stuff done on them, which is what it is. It's experimental, isn't it? Done on them. I think I probably had it done on me, but I can't be 100% sure. And the reasons why I do is Fritz Springmeier has confirmed it. Somebody came to me and said I had, after reading my book, and I didn't believe them because I'd never heard of it. So I'd heard about it in that way. And because certain things in my life I did feel directed, I did feel as there was a hard wind blowing and taking me here, taking me there. But I always thought that was my higher power. And I always knew I was looked after and guided by spiritual energies. I assumed, probably naively, that it was good angels, good forces. Obviously one does, thinking back, obviously being mixed up with the news of the world, being mixed up with ex-MI6 agencies, the private spooks, one of which I seen has been looking at my LinkedIn profile. So I think they're going to come at me soon. So come at me, do what you want. I haven't shared anything. I've signed things when I work for these companies. I haven't talked about these companies. I've just mentioned working for them. So I've done nothing wrong. But yeah, so yeah, working for those companies, the involvement with the real IRA, the affair with the real IRA commander, I thought that excuse me, I've got flu. I thought that was probably me wanting to be a good writer, and I would get a book out of it. Again, there's I think I'm going to get a book out of it, but actually there's no bloody books, and actually I'm probably not that good a writer, but this was what I had in my head. Oh, I'm doing that because I'm going to be a writer. But actually, I think that was just someone else's agenda. I even think the meeting with Brady is the Beauty and the Beast scenario. It was dished up to the public as, oh, look what the dirty serial killer did to the beautiful young girl. And I'll say beautiful young girl because I was, at that point, the stereotypical chocolate chocolate box blonde with the big blue eyes, looks a lot younger than I actually was at the time. I looked like a teenager, even though I wasn't. I was in my 20s. So there was that. And of course, there's the kind of dirtying. And Douglas Dietrich said that was just to get me there so he could slime on me. He said that really pleases them, that sliming. So that was why I was there, to get slimed on. And I did feel it. It was, that could have finished me. If I were a different kind of person, that could have put my lights out, that experience. It really could have done. And I think that's why I do get angry when I get trolls, especially know-it-all ones who come after and say things like, she never would have been left alone with Brady. And then when I said, you would know, yes, I do know. You know, it just like makes me like, because of the slime. It was literally, I was having diarrhea poured down my throat. It was a real nasty experience, and I do minimize it to myself to get over it, but it was a horrible experience, and it was him dumping everything on me, everything that he doesn't own, dumped on me, and I felt I had to carry it and work through it somehow. This darkness, bizarre. So Douglas Dietrich said that is, and all these people that know a lot about Monarch have told me that I'm definitely one, and that definitely was about that. And of course, the real IRA commander was the being a courier, bringing back the information to my other boyfriend, who was an SAS commander, which leads me to another point that someone was making. How many partners has she had? Not that many, actually, because they were my only partners. There wasn't boyfriends who weren't News of the World editors and weren't real IRA commanders. There was just them. So actually, if you compare me to another woman, there's very little lovers gone on. So this guy was calling me a slut. I'm not slut, actually. That was very definitely marionetted. It wasn't my choice in it. And the final straw to the evidence that looking at it is when I shot myself in the foot with the John Boyle thing, and I handed over the News of the World to them, my 6-figure salary, when I had decided not to. And it's almost like I got the trigger from the nun, the phone call. And David Icke said to me, that phone call's so important. I said, yeah, I know it is. And I went to the phone and rang you and said, I will introduce you to John Boyle. And of course, he then destroyed the News of the World. And just to add more evidence to it, he wasn't even mentioned in Nick Davis's book. Well, he was mentioned, but he's mentioned like throwaway line, not that he works for MI6, not that he's a multi-millionaire who hangs out with Paul McCartney, who owns many £1 million mansion out there in Sussex. So none of that. So nobody thinks he's a Mr. Big, and everybody ignores the link then to the state, and the state have shut down investigations in the media. Indeed, I've been commissioned by a certain magazine to write about Mazza Mahmood. Now, Mazza Mahmood, who's used to be the fake sheikh for the News of the World, he has been of course he was wrong to do what he's done, and I can't say much because it's ongoing, but he's in court at the moment, and it was in the Guardian today. I'm sure everybody's seen the Mazza Mahmood trial, the fake sheikh, and I no doubt it will be front page either Friday or Monday when it ends. I don't know what's going to happen to him. I can't talk about it. But I have written a piece for a certain magazine that will come out after. But I find it really interesting how the News of the World crashes. Someone who's the top investigations guy, and he's good, then goes to the Sunday Times, and then he goes from the Sunday Times to the Sun, and then gets burned. And it's burned by someone else, so it seems. It just seems, I don't know, it just seems odd. I know now that there's no more investigations than Fleet Street, so the British press have been shut down. So there's nothing really coming in, nothing going out. It's basically a PR organisation for the government now. And I thought that Nick Davis was going to expose that in his book because, the Guardian on the side of the people, so left wing. Yeah, we just care about the people. Well, no, they don't actually. They are just as much in the pockets of the state controllers as the Sun. So annoying the way they urinate on us and tell us this complete and utter lie because they're all poncy and they were educated at Oxford. They're like, oh no, we're really on the side of the people, and that's all we care about because we're loving and we're educated and we're enlightened. Well, no, you're not actually. Or Nick Davis would have exposed the state in his book. He would have done a profile on John Boyle. Why wasn't there a profile on John Boyle? And I've since asked him, and although I did have masses of contact with him while he was writing the book, he seemed to cut off from me when the book was published. I wasn't invited to the party. But then I sent him a few emails since then, didn't get a reply. But when I sent an email and I said, you really annoyed me, Nick, because you didn't expose John. And he said to me, oh, I actually heard back from him. And he goes, he's on this. And he spent time writing this email mentioning the pages where he's mentioned on. I said, you know what I mean. He won't even be. There's going to be a movie with George Clooney. He won't even be profiled in the movie. It will just all be this silly private eye that wanted to hack the Queen. No, I'm sorry, it wasn't. That guy who did the hacking was trained up by John. He was his little office boy, and the News of the World took him, and he was stupid. And of course, he hacked whoever they said, and that's why the shit hit the fan, because it wasn't actually the real person who brought it in, the mastermind who brought it in and then quickly disappeared. It was just the silly office boy who didn't know any better and like hacked the Queen and the Diana's sons. What a retard. But nobody looks have a movie now in Hollywood where it's just this private eye. Ooh, and he did something so silly because private eyes are silly, and nobody will know that the press was actually destroyed. So we get no information about what's really going on in the world, about what's really going on in different countries. We just get propaganda fed to us like we're retarded, because they actually do hate us. They do really loathe us. So anyway, oh my God, it's 8:15. My guest, seemingly their Skype isn't working. Wow. I did have Mr. Sean Breach, who spent his time growing up in South Africa, and then he was in the army in South Africa. I actually met him through my troll, who told me about him, and I thought, wow, he sounds really fascinating. Of course, he had written stuff about him on the internet that was completely untrue. And so he was trolling him as well as trolling me. And so we kind of got together to kind of try and sort this guy out. But then we became very good friends, actually. He's so fascinating. And I just thought, he can talk so long about South Africa and what's going on there, that I find it so interesting because he served in the army out there and he did, I think, a bit of mercenary work. And he's really quite a military expert. And I find him really interesting. But he was going to come on the show, but his Skype, for some reason, didn't connect. So afraid you've been left with me. I've got flu, so I'm finding this really hard. But given my relationship with the Revolution Radio owner at the moment, which is pretty torn to shreds, I best do a whole show. I actually feel really bad. I feel really bad. I'm not sure I can talk for all that length of time. I might actually read a story. If anybody's interested, a bedtime story. I will read everyone a bedtime story. So if you want to pause this and then wait till you're sleepy and then tucked up in bed with a teddy, I don't mind. I'm not going to judge. I will read a bedtime story. So I'll do that in the last half hour. So this creep was saying to me, oh, you're not monarch. It's so embarrassing what you say about monarchs. It's weird because people say that online. You really just want to like lunge at them. Just immediately you just feel like lunging them. My reaction is always like physical almost when you get these crass obtuse, retarded comments aimed at you. And this idiot clearly thinks it's a great thing. Ooh, I'm a monarch. I'm a monarch. What it means is a victim. It's a victim. Someone has got you. They've got you like a fly, and they've basically got like that, and they've smeared you, slimed you on their fingers, and they still exist, whether they're in a different dimension. That person that victimized you, that took your whole life, they're still out there. So so basically you're someone's shit catcher. That's what it means to be a monarch. Someone's shit catcher. Not so glamorous now, is it, John? Yeah, so as I was saying, that was my evidence for thinking that it had happened to me. As I say, you can never be sure. I mean, it might just be that I went through my life acting like an horse, but I'm pretty much sure I know what I was doing, and I was real busy, and it feels like it's someone else's agenda. And I look back and feel like basically like a marionette. And yeah, it's a horrible feeling. It really is, because you do feel kind of, I don't know, you do feel really, really used. Because literally, I'm middle-aged now and I've had my life, and yet I haven't built anything. I haven't married. I haven't, thank God I have a child, but who's now a teenager. But I haven't property, I haven't assets, and I've worked pretty hard in pretty high level places all of my life. And the reason why is because I have been someone's shit catcher. I've been someone's wipe on their fingers. And it's quite horrible to see it, because, I'm going to be dead. I haven't got that much longer. How long do women last? 30 years, another 30 years, I suppose. And then I'll be curtains, and it does make you feel bad. And then this guy went on, he was saying, you're trying to earn money out of it. Chance to be a fine thing. I would love to sell the book that used to be In for the Kill, that used to be the phone hacking book, that's now How Nick Davis Hired Me to Spy. I would love to sell that, but nobody buys it. It sits there on Amazon. It's quite an interesting story about, what went on in my life. But it's also got Bianchi in the second part, but nobody buys it. It sits there. So trying to make money out of it. Don't worry, darling. That won't happen. It's no need for you to wet your knickers. Anyway, so I've had my beef because my guest hasn't showed up. So basically, I'm going to read a story now because I wonder, will I be able to get away with not doing the last 10 minutes? Probably not, because everyone's upset. Hawk, he's gutting for me now, so I've got to do the whole show, which I suppose is only what you should do anyway. But it's really difficult when there's problems with a guest. It's wearing me out, actually, because when it started, there was like lots of guests around, and then the thing with Max happened, and he was a guest for a while, and he said, I'll be your forever guest. I think I did him a favor. Oh, I did him a favor. Miles didn't want him at the conference, and I basically talked Miles round, and he said, I owe you my life now, because he really wanted to do that conference. And he said, what did I ask him? I said, oh, firstly, get rid of my troll, please. And he said, consider him my enemy. I'll get rid of him. And the second one was to come on my show, and he said, yeah, I'll be your forever guest. So I I remember when he told me, I felt a lot of like, a lot of, oh, thank God, because I was everything was wearing a bit thin. I felt I'd talked to everyone, and everyone that had things in common with. I know lots of guests were thrown up to me. Taj got me Cara St. Louis, Danielle Verrete, but I didn't feel that I had anything in common with them, and so I didn't want them as guests, because I didn't, they're quite girly girls, and I'm not a girly girl. So I thought, how am I going to talk to them? How am I going to be relaxed with them? I can't be relaxed with them. So I'd kind of run out of people in that field. And so when Max said he would be my forever guest, I kind of thought, and something within me sort of let go of the stress of that. And when he died, yeah, well, that's shot to shit. So it just feels like something's been ruined with the whole thing somehow. I feel like, I don't know, my heart's not in it really. Yeah, I just feel a certain amount of my heart not being in it because of his death, actually. So I don't know how much longer I will go on doing it because I pretty much told my story to death. I think people might be getting a tiny bit sick of it. Anyway, I'll read this book. I went yesterday. Excuse excuse me. Oh, I'm so sick. I went yesterday looking for a book, and in the entrance to Waterstone was a new book out, and it's by Jonathan Luna, and it's called Starbright and the Looking Glass. So I bought it, even though it was £12, and so I'm just going to share that now. I'm going to share the book. It's got pictures in, but you won't be able to see the pictures. It's bad luck about that, but okay. No, firstly, okay, I'm going to stop. Okay. Once upon a time, there was a baby girl who was abandoned in the wood. 3 young animals, Toad, Owl, and Capybara, found her in a clearing one night, under the light of a full moon. The animals thought she looked like a bright star, and so they called her Starbright. Together the 4 grew up in the wood. Just turning the page. Starbright spent her days lying about, picking flowers and playing with her friends, Toad, Owl, and Capybara. She was naturally beautiful, but quite dirty and unkempt. Her face was covered in layers of greasy grime collected over the years. Her hair was a tangled mess, often spattered with dirt and crawling with bugs. Her dress, traded from a passing merchant years before, was tattered and filthy. It was a dark, shiny, ornate... Oh, hang on, I've skipped a bloody page. One day, while taking a stroll along her favourite pond with her friends, Starbright found a strange object stuck in the grounds. It was a dark, shiny, ornate, and had a long staff for a handle. Nothing like it existed in the wood. Starbright feared the object and kept her distance from it, but she was intrigued as well. Her curiosity was piqued. "What is that?" she asked her friends, not turning away from the tall, mysterious thing. The animals looked at each other and shrugged. Owl said, "We have no idea, Starbright. We've never seen anything like it before." Walking up to the object, Starbright saw herself in the shiny oval. She was startled. Certainly she had seen her own reflection in water before, but never as clearly as this. Starbright asked, "Is this me? Is this what I look like?" Taking a closer look at herself, she gasped. Starbright turned to her friends and exclaimed, "I'm hideous. I had no idea I was this filthy and scruffy. Why hasn't anyone told me? Dear Toad, dear Owl, dear Capybara." The animals looked at each other again, confused. "But Starbright, this is the way you've always looked to us," said Toad. "We never thought you looked hideous," added Capybara. "You've seen travellers come through the woods," said Starbright. "You must have seen that I look disgusting by comparison." The animals shrugged. Starbright began to inspect the object. "This shiny part is reflective like water," she said, then squinted. "Why isn't it wet? Why isn't it rippling or pouring out? Why can't I put my fingers through it?" Starbright didn't know what the object was called. She thought it looked like a combination of a cooking pan and a stick, so she decided to call it a pan stick. She pulled the pan stick out of the ground and kept it for herself. Starbright began to work on her appearance. She She spied on beautiful women who travelled with passing merchants and wanted to emulate them. First, she bathed in the pond. She had done so before, but this time she scrubbed for hours until she saw her reflection change in the pan stick. The grime that had collected on her skin over the years was finally washed away. Her dress was once again white. Her hair was more golden than she would ever remember it being. Fish scattered from the cloud of dirt she created in the water. Second, she made a hairbrush by wrapping a piece of boa fur around a stick. Brushing her hair with the stiff boa bristles, she flung the dirt and bugs out. Her hair was now soft and wavy instead of a tangled mess. Gosh, it'd be really nice if I didn't have to turn these pages. Golly. Then she mended her tattered dress with a needle and thread made from bone and flax. It's a pity you can't see these pictures. They're so nice. They're like paintings. I so love this book. She even used pulverized chalk to smooth out her complexion and crushed mulberries to give redness to her cheeks and lips. To top everything off, she crowned herself with white roses. After days of work, Starbright looked in the pan stick again and was overjoyed with her newfound beauty. I look amazing, she exclaimed. I can't believe this beauty was hidden for so long. Starbright spent days gazing at herself in the pan stick. She didn't speak to her friends, though they were close by her side as usual. This behaviour worried and confused the animals. One day, Toad hopped forward and asked, "Why do you look at yourself all day?" "Because I'm beautiful," said Starbright, not moving her eyes away from her reflection. "In fact, there's nothing more beautiful to look at." "Why don't we do something fun?" asked Owl. "Let's play a game in the woods," suggested Capybara. Starbright became annoyed and eyes still looking glassy snarled. "I don't want to play with you. Actually, I don't ever want to be around any of you. Toad, you're fat and slimy. Owl, you're a big-headed, big-eyed bird. And Capybara, you look like an overgrown bunny rabbit without the adorable ears. You're all ugly creatures, and I want you to get lost. I would rather be around butterflies, swans, and ponies. I only want to be around beautiful things now." The animals looked at each other, very puzzled. They had never seen Starbright act this way before. Hurt from the insults and having lost such a dear friend, they slouched away to the wood. But before they walked 10 little animal paces, they heard Starbright scream. When the animals turned, they saw black smoke shoot out of the pan stick. The smoke looked alive, turning into dark, misty ribbons, then into a woman in a long black robe. She was the ugliest woman Starbright and the animals had ever seen. Her eyes were almost popping out of her head. Her nose was freakishly long and crooked. Her mouth was a permanent sneer, and her face had a few unfortunate warts. Starbright and the animals could barely stand to look at her. The ugly woman faced Starbright and smiled and croaked, "Hello, beautiful girl. I see you found my looking glass." "Looking glass?" stuttered Starbright. "What's a looking glass? How did you come out of there?" "I am Crona, the sorceress. Have you not heard of me?" "Well, you do live in the wood," said the ugly woman. "What is your name, dear girl?" "Starbright." "Starbright," Crona slowly repeated. "Very appropriately named." She deliberately took the pan stick from Starbright, shaking hands, and said, "This is a looking glass, a mirror. Beautiful girls love looking glasses. However, this particular one is very special. It can do amazing things. For one, I asked it to show me a beautiful maiden, and it showed you. I couldn't tell if you were truly beautiful, so I pasted the looking glass here near the pond to make sure. And you cleaned up nicely, quite nicely." Starbright squinted and asked, "You've been spying on me?" "I have a fountain in my castle that shows me what looking glass sees. I can travel between them too," said Chroma. "The reason I'm here is because I thought you'd be the perfect person to help me with something." "You want me to help you?" Starbright asked softly. Chroma quickly raised the looking glass, held it between herself and Starbright, and chanted, looking glass, spin around, give me the beauty that I have found. The looking glass spun and spun faster and faster and glowed brighter than any light Starbright had ever seen. Waves of energy shot out of the looking glass onto Starbright and Chroma. For a moment, the two were paralyzed, linked by its power. And there's a lovely picture there, actually, if you want to go and buy this book. When the light died down, the animals couldn't believe their eyes. Chroma was no longer ugly. She now looked like Starbright, and Starbright looked like Chroma. Their bodies had been switched. Chroma stared into the looking glass and burst into laughter. I'm beautiful, I'm beautiful. After all these years, I am so beautiful. Starbright, with trembling hands, felt her face. She looked down at her body and saw Chroma's grey, scraggy form. Eyes wide in shock, she turned to the sorceress and asked, why are you doing this? Chroma's big smile faded when she pulled her eyes away from the looking glass and turned to Starbright, the new bearer of her ugly face. After looking at it for decades, she hated to do so for one more second. Chroma began, like me, my mother was a sorceress, and like me, my mother was one of the ugliest people to ever exist. I will never be as great a sorceress as my mother was. It was she who created this looking glass, and after she did, she asked it to show her a beautiful maiden no person cares about, just as I did. My mother became very beautiful, almost as beautiful as I am now, but then she died an untimely death. Chroma paused and stared into the mirror. She began to admire her face again, but then interrupted herself, pushing the mirror aside. Why am I doing this? Because I deserve better than everyone else. Chroma lifted the looking glass, and now that I have better, I can't have you trying to take it back. Chroma swung the looking glass towards the ground. Starbright quickly lunged forward and grabbed Chroma's arms, but didn't stop them in time. Toad, Owl, and Capybara also moved forward to help, but it was too late. Chroma had struck the looking glass against a rock protruding from the ground. In a blinding flash of light, the glass shattered into pieces. The force of the hit, mixed with the looking glass's magical power, was so strong it sent the shards shooting towards the sky, then falling to different parts of the world. The frame and handle were still intact, but only one small piece of glass remained. Starbright fell to her knees in despair, and Chroma fled. This, of course, is an allegorical tale of how the wicked witch sorceress can shatter the beautiful maiden unwanted baby. It's me. Shatter their bauble of their lives. No, it's not me. I think when you buy a book, everyone relates to it, don't they? Just because I'm relating strongly here to Starbright, so I thought I'd share it. Okay, carrying on. Starbright went into hiding. Tales began to spread amongst travellers that a very ugly woman lived in a cave at the edge of the wood, weeping and sobbing all day and sometimes all night. The cave caused Starbright's mournful wailing to echo out into the world, frightening everybody away. She left the cave only to find food and water. Sometimes travellers came upon her and ran away in terror, or said hurtful things like, "What sort of creature are you?" or "Scream, beast, scream." This caused her to... Sounds like me, actually, living in my village. Sorry, interrupting. This caused her to run back to her cave and cry even more and more louder. Toad, Owl, and Capybara saw what Starbright was going through. They were hurt by her insults and commands to stay away from her, but they knew she needed a friend. Oh, so the animals came. The animals loved her, so they came to try and save her. Moving on. Toad, Owl, and Capybara followed the echoing whispers to the end of the cave, where they found Starbright huddled up and crying against the farthest wall, hugging the broken-looking glass. It still shocked the animals to see her with a different body. "Starbright," whispered Owl. "Starbright," said the Toad, Owl, and Capybara, stood before her, and she quickly covered her face in shame. Eventually she lowered her hands to look at her friends, tears pouring from her eyes. The animals looked back at her in sadness. "I used to be beautiful," Starbright snivelled. "And now I'm ugly." I know how she feels. Oh. The animals just stood there and listened to her. It was also bizarre for them to hear her speak in a deep, raspy voice, not the soft one that she used to have. She lightly shook the looking glass and said, "It's broken. I'm going to look like this for the rest of my goddamn life." The animals glanced at each other. After a pause, Al said, "We've brought something for you." With her face wet from tears, Starbright looked confused. Then she noticed that something in Toad's mouth was glowing. What can it be? I'm going to turn the page and find out. Toad opened his mouth and rolled out his tongue. Within it was a small shard that had been flung from the looking glass. It was lying not far from the pond, Capybara chimed in. To everyone's surprise, both shards were emitting a glow. The tongue-tied Toad said, "Look at that. That's shining." "They must be shining because they're so close to each other," Capybara observed. Starbright delicately took the shard from Toad and found that it fit next to the remaining piece on the looking glass. Before their eyes, the two pieces melded together in an even brighter glow, which then subsided altogether. The four were amazed. Starbright slowly stood up with the looking glass in her hands and said, "It was broken, but perhaps it can still be of some use. I can find the missing shards, and with the help of the looking glass itself, I can become me again. And when I find it, I will fix myself. I must be me again." And now she was. Right, carrying on. Before Starbright could take a step forward, Al said, "You will need more help. We feel horrible that you, our dearest friend, had your beauty stolen," said Capybara. "We want to help you find the shards, no matter where they are in the world." Starbright was struck by how unconditionally loyal her friends were, even though she treated them badly. Her face became red with shame and her eyes darted around the ground. She felt she could say something to give thanks, but pride got in her way, so all she could muster was a quiet, "Okay then." Starbright and the animals left the wood and headed out in search of the missing shards. Starbright used the broken looking glass as a walking stick and hiked ahead of Toad, Al, and Capybara. A fly buzzed around her face, and she tried to swat it with her hand, saying, "Ooh, flies are gross." While she was distracted, the animals took the moment to talk amongst themselves. Toad said, "Starbright was mean to us, and I don't like the way she is with the looking glass. Why are we helping her?" "She was mean to us," Al responded, "but she's our true friend. If this is what she wants, we should help her." Capybara nodded in agreement. Toad wasn't sure if he agreed, but he hopped along with Al and Capybara anyway. As they journeyed, Al flew high, high above, looking for anything that glowed. A shard would shine brightly if the looking glass was near it. In the hills of the grasslands, Al spotted a glowing shard from miles away. When they reached the shard, Starbright added it to the looking glass. Again the pieces merged in a bright glow. "Oh, Starbright," Al said as he landed on her shoulder. "If only I could search the world by myself and save you all of the trouble. I would, but the looking glass shards are too big and slippery for my small beak and claws." "So no matter," she said. "You can spot the littlest things from so far away. We wouldn't be able to find the shards at all if not for your big, beautiful eyes." The fluffy owl hooted with joy and flew a little lighter that day. They found another shard glowing in the sea, not far from the coast. Toad said, "I love the water, but Capybara is actually a much better swimmer than I." Capybara jumped into the ocean and dove deep towards the light. When Capybara returned to the shore with the shard, Starbright said to him, "You're an amazing swimmer. You have the perfect body for diving." The furry Capybara snorted with joy and trotted a little faster that day. Nearly finished. In the heart of a deep crevice among a large rock formation rested another shard. Only Toad was small and slippery enough to get to it. Be careful, shouted Starbright from the top of the crevice. When Toad returned with the shard wrapped within his tongue, Starbright said to him, "You're so good at squeezing through things. If it wasn't for you being little and slippery, we never would have gotten this piece." The chubby Toad croaked with joy and hopped a little higher that day. Amongst the tall, wet trees of a tropical rainforest, they encountered a shard resting on a higher branch. Living in the wood her whole life, Starbright was great at climbing trees, but with Cromer's body, she wasn't as fit as she used to be. Slowly she clambered up one of the tallest trees to get the shard. It was raining lightly throughout the forest. When Starbright returned from the tree, she and the animals tilted their heads back and opened their mouths to replenish themselves with the rain. Watching her friends quietly drinking, her eyes began to well up with tears. She fell to her knees and cried, "Oh, dear Toad, dear Owl, dear Capybara, I'm so sorry for what I said. I'm sorry for hurting your feelings. What I did was so wrong, and I will never be so awful again. Please forgive me." The animals looked at each other, and then at Starbright. "Of course we forgive you," Owl said. "You're our friend." Capybara and Toad smiled. Starbright's face relaxed with relief and her shoulders slumped as if she had let go of something extremely heavy. Suddenly Capybara hopped, shook his fist and sprayed water over everyone. Piece by piece, the looking glass was coming together. Snow fell and clouds covered the sky, blocking the sun's heat. After walking in a huddle to reach the top of a mountain, they approached the final shard and saw it lying on a frozen spike just below the sheer cliff of the mountain. The shard was small, and a gust of wind would have blown it away. Far below the cliff were even larger ice sparks. "If all four of us worked together, linking up and hanging from the cliff, we could reach it," said Capybara. Starbright looked down from the precipice and surveyed the situation. "No," she said, "it's too dangerous. We could all die." She paused, then turned to her friends. "Thank you so much for journeying with me, but I'd rather live the rest of my life in this body than lose any of you." With a sore heart, she placed the looking glass on the ground and said, "Let's go back home." The animals didn't want to accept Starbright's decision, but she insisted, and the longer they stayed on the icy mountaintop, the colder they were getting, so they headed home. Leading her friends back into the mountains, Starbright said, "It's so cold, can't we walk in a huddle?" Starbright looked behind her, and her friends were not there. Starbright ran back up the mountain and saw Capybara hanging from the cliff, Owl hanging from Capybara, and Toad hanging from Owl. Just as she reached them, Capybara's little webbed forefeet slipped from the icy edge, and all the animals began to fall. Starbright caught one of Capybara's feet just within reach and was almost pulled off the cliff. She heaved as hard as she could. Slowly she brought the animals back up to safety. Panting and lying on the ice with the animals, Starbright noticed that something in Toad's mouth was glowing. Could it be the shard? Let's turn the page and find out. Starbright held the broken looking glass and last shard in her hands. Yes, it was. She and the animals stood together, thinking about how far they had come to find all of the shards. Holding her breath, Starbright snapped the piece into its place, and the entire looking glass glowed with intense brightness and power. When the light subsided, the looking glass was complete again, as perfect as it was when Starbright first found it. There's a lovely picture there. There's pictures on every page. Black smoke shot out of the looking glass. The smoke swirled around the four friends like a dark spirit, formed into a pillar before them, and then into a beautiful woman. It was Krona. She was no longer wearing a simple robe. Instead, she wore one of the most beautiful, intricate dresses Starbright had ever seen, yet it was dark and intimidating. "Starbright," hissed Krona, eyes glaring. "You found the shards. How did you? How did you put it back together?" "My friends and I have travelled the world to do this," Starbright said. "I would like you to return me to me, and I would like you to return my looking glass," Cromer said, firing bolts of energy at Starbright from her hands that made her cower on the floor. The bolts hit the mirror and were deflected back to Cromer, striking her to the ground. Starbright held out the looking glass between Chroma and herself, ready to chant a spell. Chroma raised her hands in defense and said, "Wait, you could die if you switch us back." Starbright paused. "What are you talking about?" "When my mother stole a maiden's beauty, something happened that she didn't anticipate. She fell so in love with her appearance that she did nothing at all but stare at herself. That's why I destroyed the looking glass. I would have had the same fate, and so would you." Starbright hesitated, thinking about how she had stared at herself for days as well, loving herself and nobody else. But she didn't ponder long. She chanted, looking glass, spin around, give me the beauty that I have found." The looking glass spun and spun faster and faster and began to glow. Once again, waves of energy shot out of the looking glass onto Starbright and Chroma. For a moment, the two were paralyzed, linked by its special powers. And there's a lovely painting there of that happening. The blinding light died down, and Starbright had her own body back once again. "I'm back to normal," Starbright exclaimed. "No," said Clona, clutching her face. "This can't be. I just want to be beautiful." Suddenly she lunged for the looking glass. Starbright looked in the mirror and saw her beautiful face. For her, everything in the world turned black. All she wanted was stare at herself and love herself all day long. The animals saw her staring. "What is she doing?" Al asked. "Oh dear," Toad said. "I can't hold Chroma back any longer," Capybara said. "Let go of me, you disgusting beast," Chroma shouted. Starbright looked so happy, gazing at herself, and that she was completely captivated. But then a little sliver of a thought crept into her mind. She remembered that loving her beauty this much turned her into a monster on the inside. She remembered being horrible to her beloved friends. Starbright blinked and looked away from the mirror. Her hair was still tied up from the way Chroma had it, and she loosened it, letting it fall naturally. Then she raised the looking glass to the sky and said to the sorceress, "You asked the looking glass to show you a beautiful maiden no person cares about, but my friends are the animals. I am cared about. I am loved by somebody. So the maiden you want is not me." Starbright swung the looking glass down. Starbright struck the looking glass against an icy pot with so much force that the glass exploded once again. Even the frame and staff shattered into thousands of pieces. Starbright, Chroma, and the animals fell on their backs, and the shards were sent flying high into the sky. But this time they did not return to the earth. They shot past the clouds, leaving the atmosphere. To everyone's surprise, the shards stayed anchored on the sky and joined the stars. The shining shards became known as a constellation, symbolizing the story about an ugly woman who tried to steal another woman's beauty. This legend spread to all the people of the world, and the constellation was named after Chroma, who lived the rest of her life hiding in shame. For many years, travellers heard mournful wailing coming from an old castle on the hill. Toad, Owl, and Capybara and Starbright returned to their home, the wood. After such a long journey, they were very tired, a bit like me now. And so they found a comfortable spot below the stars and laid down on the grass to rest their weary bodies and droopy eyelids. Starbright was not as prim and elegant as before, nor was she as dirty as content. Yet she felt in the middle. She felt happy, and that was what counted. She looked at her friends and thought about everything they had done for her, and they returned her gaze of love. Dear Toad, dear Owl, dear Capybara," she whispered, "I love you so much." That's the end. That's the end. So I hope everyone's enjoyed the show. I hope you enjoyed that story and perhaps played it at bedtime with some cocoa and hot milk, because we all need to get in contact with that child inside. That child isn't dead. It's still there. It's crying out for attention, and yet it never gets attention. We give it adult things all the time, and sometimes we just have to focus on that little child inside us and say, everything's okay, and give it a little treat like hot chocolate and a really lovely fairy story, which is what that was. So I hope everyone enjoyed it. Towards the end of the show, I have managed to talk for 2 hours because my guest hasn't got their Skype working, and I've got terrible flu. I feel like hell. Perhaps it's not flu, perhaps it's just a cold. So I have to go now, and it's been really nice, really nice sharing. It's getting late. I have 7 minutes to go. I guess I have to listen for the music. What a shame. Dear Sean didn't have time to share about South Africa and what's going on at the moment. So hopefully we can try again next week, and he can come back and I will be in better form, and we can talk about South Africa, what's going on. I'd like to finish on a prayer. Thank you, God, for all the things you've given me today. Thank you for the walk I had in the park earlier in bare feet. Thank you for making me enjoy the sunshine, laying on the ground, talking to you, talking to the sky, talking to the trees, really enjoying your presence, the breeze on my cheeks. Thank you, Father, for giving me all those beautiful things today. Thank you for giving me the radio show. Thank you for all the people that run it, including Hawk. Thank you for all the people that have come on to be guests, even if sometimes they were stroppy. Thank you for my friends. Thank you for my beautiful child. Thank you for my good health, apart from this flu, which I'm sure will go soon. And thank you for my beloved listeners. I hope all of you have a lovely evening or a lovely day, wherever you are. I'm sure the music will come soon, and I am going to go and crawl into a corner and absolutely die because I feel like hell. No, actually, I'm going to get some ginger, peel the ginger, chop it up, and then throw it in a saucepan with some water, and then boil that little mixture. Boil it for 5 minutes, and then sweeten it into a cup with the ginger. add some lemon, and then add some quite a lot of honey. And then I'm going to drink it when it's hot, even though it's like, well, the honey makes it bearable, but ginger is tends to burn the back of the throat. But it really, ginger, when you're feeling like this, like really drenched, ginger is the only answer. It really is. Root ginger, buy a weirdly shaped knobble of ginger from a supermarket, and then peel it, and then get at what's in there, because it's a real healer when it comes to flus and colds. It's really amazing. It's better than garlic even. If you can throw some garlic in with that also would be good, but I think that's taking a bit too far. Well, I'm sad that my guest wasn't able to speak tonight, and I have spoken instead. And that's the end of the show. And thank you for joining me. And God bless. God bless you all.
Thank you for listening to Revolution Radio.